Before we start, can I just take a very quick show of hands to see how many of you are regular Facebook users? Quite significant, because we were just talking backstage about business use of Facebook, and I think that's quite an interesting place to start. You know, people think of social media as being social, but it really does have quite a few business applications nowadays.
It certainly does, and as you were hearing, the region that I look after is Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and the span of that region is huge. So whilst you have on the Western European and Central European side very sophisticated, very large businesses, and some of our biggest advertisers are people like L'Oreal, Unilever, you know, big European businesses that are, you know, centered here and then go global. But we also have the African businesses and small business owners in various parts of Africa. So it's a really diverse region with lots of different challenges. And business is thankfully going okay. We had good growth, both in the numbers of people coming on, and also in the numbers of businesses coming on. And we recently announced that we have now over 1 million advertisers, and a very significant proportion of those come from this region. And it is everybody from kind of the mom and pop shops to, you know, these big global businesses as well. But the really interesting part of the business is really where we're going on the Africa side, because one of our things is about how we make the world more open and connected, and how we can get that message out and create the platform out and get the internet out to people in Africa as well. So we're putting a lot of work, a lot of resource into that area.
I saw a very funny interview with you that was conducted by a very young man who said cool in response to anything you said. And he subjected you to a quick fire round of questions, and one of the questions he asked you was mobile or net. What do you think you answered?
I don't know what I answered. Should have watched my own videos.
It's before you were at Facebook, of course.
Then I would have probably have said net, but now I would definitely say mobile.
You already said mobile.
Did I?
You were prescient.
And that was a few years ago. But I mean, the growth in mobile, I mean, probably people have got 1 or 2 devices in front of them today. The growth in mobile, I mean, has taken everybody by surprise. But it's extraordinary, you know, in terms of what we're now doing with it. We have now over 1 billion people using mobile on Facebook every month. And of those, about 3/4 coming back every day. And we're seeing more and more growth on Facebook as a result of these incredible computers that are in each of our hands. So mobile, mobile, mobile.
Are there challenges with that transition as well?
I think there are. I mean, I did a conference a couple of weeks ago, and just in the way that you asked people to raise their hands, I asked people to raise their hands if they felt that they had a good mobile strategy. Do you know how many people put their hands up? Not one, none, nobody in the room, and this was a room full of marketeers, thought that they had a good mobile strategy. Now, we now know that people spend more time consuming media on mobile than they do in other medias, and yet we're not seeing that businesses are adapting their businesses quickly enough to go where consumers are, and that's a real disconnect, and that's something that really people and businesses need to really move on fast.
And you're saying you sounded quite optimistic in terms of where Facebook is going in EMEA, but there were some very obvious challenges when you joined. The growth was down. Where is that growth coming from, and what have the greatest challenges been in your starting time there?
So I think the biggest shift and the reason for the growth has come about because of the switch that Facebook made to get onto mobile and to be this mobile platform. And we're very much now a mobile-first company. But we got it wrong. I mean, we built on the wrong platform to start with. And it was because Mark Zuckerberg turned around and said, you know, we've done this wrong. We now need to go mobile first. Nobody can come in here now and show me any new products unless it's on mobile. So that was an adjustment that we made. And what we're seeing is, because these things are so personal in our hands, it's just easier for people to spend time on the devices. And they're now spending over half an hour a day looking at Facebook, checking out Facebook, looking at their friends, their families, and the businesses and the brands that they're interested in. So that's been the biggest shift. And then helping people understand how they can use mobile as part of their comms. Because what we're seeing now, I mean, there was some recent research that GfK did, which said that there's now in the UK and the US, more people have got 3 devices than have got 1 device. That's unbelievable. So how we're shifting in this time, it really needs to be taken into account. And how we also make comms out to people, that's something we need to take into consideration.
Do you, when you see people kind of face into phone or juggling their devices, Do you wonder whether you are actually changing the world in terms of how people interact with each other, of how people behave, or do you think that you're just tapping into existing forms of behavior?
I think there has been a shift. I think there has been a shift in consumer behavior. Arianna Huffington was interviewed recently, and she said, I mean, we all carry our phones everywhere. I don't know about you, it's the first thing I do in the morning and the last thing at night. But she said, some research that she'd found, that 20% of people use it when they're having sex. So, yeah, clearly nobody in this room, but that's what the data was that she was sharing. So yes, I do think there has been some changes. I think there's changes by the fact that there's an opportunity now to talk to people and communicate with people as businesses in a way that's never been possible before, to be very personal, to be very relevant. And actually that's going back to old behaviors because, you know, when I was growing up, I used to go to the local sweet shop, and Mildred was the name of the lady that owned the sweet shop, knew me. For real. Mildred, for real, corner shop, knew everything I loved, would make sure I had my cola cubes in, my outer spaces, knew my family, knew everything about me. It wasn't even called a business. I didn't know the word business for years. She was the sweet shop lady. And actually, we can do a lot of that again because we know a lot about people now. We know what they like, we know what they're interested in, and we can market to people in a much more personal way that's never been possible before.
The thing people won't know about you is that you still get those cola cubes and...
I do.
I'm not kidding. This woman, she doesn't look like it, but she lives on sweets.
I have a very unhealthy addiction to pen. It's Mildred's fault, just so everybody knows.
Now, Facebook recently made a couple of really major acquisitions, WhatsApp and this amazing immersive virtual reality, Oculus virtual reality. What should we draw from those acquisitions? What does that tell us about Facebook's strategy going forward?
Okay, so things have changed at Facebook in recent times. Mark Zuckerberg made some announcements earlier in the year, both of these two acquisitions. We used to have everything in one app. We thought that was the way, just to have the Facebook app. But actually, we want to make the world more open and connected. We want people, that's the mission, we want people to share more. And we discovered actually it's not the best user experience, the best consumer experience for people just to do everything in one place. And we saw the uptake in Messenger, which has been huge. I mean, our own Messenger app had 200 million people. And then we were looking at WhatsApp. And WhatsApp today has nearly 500 million people on it, especially in the developing markets. And I talked a little bit earlier about why Africa matters to us and why it's so important. So we were seeing that there was a whole new way that people are communicating, still sharing more, etc. So yes, that's why we did WhatsApp. We see that it's mobile, and we think that mobile is the platform for today. Oculus Rift, which is our immersive 3D virtual reality, is a kind of a bet on the future. We think that, I mean, when I was growing up, this whole world of sci-fi, you know, was something that, you know, was the art of the imagination, the possible, what might one day be. If anybody tried Oculus Rift, it's okay, so you know, you put it on, and big thumb, it's unbelievable. You put the goggles on, and if you go, it's a roller coaster ride. You imagine you're going up on a roller coaster, and you look down, and it is literally like what it feels like to be on the top of a roller coaster. It's incredible. Now, if you imagine how you might use that same technology to say, imagine there's a football game on, which apparently there's a few football games going on at the moment that quite a lot of people care about. But imagine being at home, watching it as you would do normally on your television, but with this device on, and then looking around you and your friends are watching it with you. That gives you a whole different experience as to what it might look like. Imagine then that you took it further and imagine how it might be teaching a room of children, this same sort of thing. So I think it's very, very exciting. It's a bet on the future, but if you try it, you kind of go, I've seen the future. This feels very exciting.
I think the idea of people watching the last England match all wearing those is kind of depressing, but beyond that, I'm very...
Well, I think their body language might be a bit like this, really.
One of the perceptions about Facebook was that you struggled a bit to get and retain young users. Is one of the reasons that you've gone for this to address that?
No, I think I'll take both of those. No, hopefully I've explained why WhatsApp and Oculus were important to us. This issue of teens is just not true. We have the most engaged audience with young people on Facebook. And actually, there's some Forrester research that's out literally just today that says actually...
Hot off the presses.
Literally hot off the press. So if it's interesting to you, it is out there, which basically says that 3/4 of young people on the internet are on Facebook. They're spending more time on Facebook, and we think, again, this is because of the shift to mobile and how quickly people are now spending and consuming more time. But they love it. It's where they come back to. And as a mum of a few kids, 2 of which are on Facebook, the other 2 are few. The other 2 are not allowed yet because they're not old enough. But the older 2, I mean, it's the place where they group all of their social media. Yes, they use other things as well, and you would expect that with young people. But it's the place they come back to because it's the place where people are their real selves. They know it's where their friends are. And therefore, there's a huge amount of trust. And also, it's the place where they seem to make most of their social arrangements. So that's why I think we're doing all right.
That leads quite naturally into the whole issues around privacy and content, you know, how you manage to maintain both of those on Facebook. Very challenging areas for you, I presume.
So user trust is the single most important thing to us at Facebook. It's the thing that we monitor more than anything, and we do research with people all over the world every day. And to give you that context, you know, we now have 1.28 billion people are on the platform, and over 800 million people come back every single day. So trust is absolutely the bedrock of the business that we are in. And we've made it easier and easier for people to be in control of their data. We've set up some new privacy controls where people are very clear about who they're sharing things with, it's literally when you come up, it says, are you posting this to your friends, to the public, to your inner sanctums? You can group your data in your way. It's the user's information, it's your information, and that's the thing that's most important, and we look at this more importantly than anything.
Now, the tech industry has a very sort of male-dominated, you know, when we think of Facebook, we think of, now we think of Cheryl, but we also think of Mark Zuckerberg and his hoodies. Have you found it to be a very male-dominated environment?
So I think, if you look at the numbers, yes, it is. I mean, the tech industry is very dominated by men because of the engineering side. But it is great that there are more and more women coming through, like Cheryl, and making a very strong stance on women's role in business. And hopefully a few of you might have read Lean In. Something that we take very seriously at Facebook, diversity across all its measures is something that we hold to be very dear and really at the forefront of everything we do from recruitment onwards. But the bigger issue is engineering and why we don't have enough women that are doing engineering and the drop-off rates from the age of 15 onwards, where across the world, we see this across the world. And so we're putting more time and effort into younger women, working with, well, younger girls really at school age, to make sure that they don't cross themselves out from not doing physics, not doing maths that are equivalent of A levels around the world, then taking the right degrees at university and then leaving the world open that they then can maybe take on engineering. It's a really important issue.
Well, sadly, we're very short of time, and I'm afraid I'm going to end on a frivolous question which relates to your own Facebook use. I actually am a keen follower of Nicola on Facebook as well as in real life, and I'm aware that you are the absolute queen of the selfie. You cannot believe, in fact, I can't believe, I'm insulted that we're sitting here and you haven't done a selfie with me.
No, I've got Layla's taking a picture.
Yeah, but that's... is there anybody you actually haven't dared to ask? And is there anybody you're still intending to ask?
I've never not dared ask anybody anything because my mum taught me that you never go through life thinking, I wish I'd have done that, should have done that, could have done that. And I would literally have kicked myself if I didn't get the shot. And of course that's led to some ooh moments when people are not so comfortable, but with a smile you usually get it through. Who would I still like? On the serious side, probably people, not met Hillary Clinton, would love to get a picture with Hillary. Missed Malala. I didn't get there in time, but she's totally want to meet Malala and get a selfie. And then if you ask me the frivolous girl, I'll end on it. Brangelina, got to get that picture in the middle. So that's the hard to do, me in the middle of Brad and Angelina.
A Brangelina sandwich, you heard it here. Nicola, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.